Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, whenever and wherever you're hearing this. You are listening to the season reboot of the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast. My name is Ed Brickeen. I am your host for these festivities, and today our topic is the NHL. I am joined by Last Word on Hockey's own Bill Grigsby. How you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing great. I survived foraging at Walmart, so what else can I say?
Well, that's always a good thing. How long you been with Last Word?
It's been a little over a year. I started February of last year, probably written about 220 or so articles, so I keep pretty busy with that.
And how long have you been a writer covering the NHL?
Oh, gosh. I go way back. I worked for Fansided. I worked for Babel, as you know. And it's probably about 8, 9 years, off and on, but mostly on.
All right, fantastic. Well, our topic today is on the NHL, or what could be left of the NHL. Of course, as we all know, the NHL is down, as is every other major professional sport other than professional wrestling, because of the coronavirus. COVID-19 has wreaked unprecedented amounts of havoc. What have you seen, Bill, as far as what it's done to the NHL?
Well, economically, it's pretty much going to decimate it like the rest of the economy. So, I'm thinking that for the owners to make back some money, because they really just care about money, most of them, they're going to have some kind of, and I've been looking at all the different options for the playoffs, and they jump right into the playoffs because it doesn't look like they're going to come back to finish the season. If you're talking mid-June, you're going to run it into the 2021 season. So, I like the 24-team playoff format. And there's a couple different ways to do it.
Right.
But,
and we're gonna come across the playoff formats here in a minute.
Okay.
Would you kind of categorize this equal to a strike, maybe like that we saw in the mid '90s? Definitely not 2003 yet.
Yet, yeah. It feels like that. It feels like they've even gone. I don't know what you're seeing locally there, but they've even gone for the Coyotes and including the broadcasters who do the live regular games when they're being played. They're doing the NHL 20 and they're re-showing games that should have been scheduled, and it's kind of cool. It's very good graphics. I've never really played that NHL game, but it looks really. I don't know how realistic it is. It's probably about as realistic as any of the other forecasters that simulate games, but at least it's something. You hear your local hockey announcer, and it almost feels like, hey, they're playing, but they're not.
Right.
So it's kind of like a bad dream that you're going to want to wake up from.
Well, I can remember in 2003 where they were also re-airing old games, and the Fox Sports affiliate in St. Louis has actually been doing that with a bunch of Cardinal games for baseball, and they've done a few Blues games as well. And it's all over. There's a bunch of places on YouTube that are doing watch-alongs and whatnot with the old games, and I'm telling you, there's one game that sticks out. Game 7 last year. I'll watch that every time it's on, just to see Brad Marchand cry. So, that just brings joy to my heart personally. Okay, so ballpark it for me there, Bill. When do you see the season resuming, if it resumes? Just as the regular season now. Are we going to see it resume?
I don't know. It's kind of screwed up. Every state is doing something different on the lockdowns. We just went into a lockdown. Like, I do security. That's my regular job, and I work at a big healthcare insurance company, and they just recently told all the employees to go home for 2 weeks. And they said, oh, it's indefinite. So, we're locked down to the end of the month. I think the NHL is locked down to the 15th of the month. So I know our guys aren't going to be doing anything from the 15th to 30th because the state's locked down. So
right.
I'm thinking, if they got to get in before mid-June, because it would be a travesty for us to not have a Stanley Cup of some kind of playoffs. We went through almost, more than 3/4 of the season looking forward to the playoffs, and then boom, we got hit by a brick wall called COVID-19. So it's disappointing. The fans are yearning to see their game. I'm yearning to write about it, but there's not much to write about. We're figuring out things as we go. But we do that in the off season. Actually, we get better views in the off season than we do during the regular season.
Well, that was going to be my next question. As a writer, this affects you. Obviously, it affects the players more, but this affects you as provided getting content out. What content? Short of the regular. Is this an off season for you guys? I mean, I know you can do the award speculation and free agency and whatever is going on in Seattle, which we'll get to later on in the show. The coaching hot seat, what have you. But is this an off season for the writers as well?
Oh no, we're still writing.
I mean, similar content to a regular off season.
Yeah, it would be similar content as the off season, excluding the draft and the free agency and all that stuff. We did really well during the trade deadline. Our views were way up. Now, I mean, we're still putting out good content and volume, but we're not seeing the views. People are busy doing their own personal thing to get through this crisis. So I get that. But, you write a good article, you say, 150 views. What did I do wrong? Well, nothing. They're just distracted with other things.
Just not there.
So, we're doing series like Team of the Decade, the last 10 years. And we do each team. We got like 35, 40 writers, so we can split it up. NHL history, which you would like, things like that. And we also do a rivalry series, which I like. So I'm doing Vegas and Sharks, which that one's got to be one of the top ones because it's a short rivalry, only a few years old, but two teams do not like each other.
Oh, I imagine a playoff series last year kind of had something to do with that as well.
I think it had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump back to getting the season underway. Obviously, we're probably not going to see a regular season. We can just put that baby to bed.
I think so.
Some teams have played 70. I think there's a few teams that have played 69 and a few that have played 71.
Mm-hmm.
So when hockey does resume, at least I hope we get playoffs, will it be 4 rounds?
I think so. They'll have to shorten the series, because they're not going to be able to play 7-game series through a bunch of rounds. They'll be going right into training camp for next season if that's the case. So, I kind of like the play-in where, if you have 12 teams, you can give the first 4 a bye, or you can just go ahead and do the matchups, with 12 teams and go maybe a 3-game series in the first round, maybe bump it up to 5 games. They just have to keep that time feature in their head when they do the scheduling.
Okay, now I actually saw something and I wanted to ask you about this. It was thrown around on NHL.com, and it is, there's only one team that's been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and that's obviously the Detroit Red Wings, God rest their souls.
Yeah.
So that leaves 30 other teams that mathematically have shots to go in. And one of the options was, and I'm not sure if the math was done correctly, but the top 2 seeds in each conference get a bye. And then there's a 1-game playoff for everybody else. After that 1-game playoff, everybody's reseeded, and then we go 3, 5, 7, 7. Is that something you would see? Is that something you would like to see?
I think the NHL, being as conservative as they are, will probably do that. They're not going to go to this wild thing of 24 teams, I don't think. I don't know. It seems unfair for a team like the Coyotes, they're not playing well, but they're only 4 points out of a playoff spot, and they had 12 games left. So who knows what can happen in those last 12 games. It just doesn't seem like, let's pick it up where the season stopped. It wasn't their fault, or any of the teams that were on the cusp, the Canadians, all those teams that are just barely trying to hang on by the skin of their teeth. So, that sounds reasonable. I always go with what would Gary Bettman do? So you have to think along.
Well, I'm not even sure we know what Gary Bettman would do because I'm not sure Gary Bettman knows what Gary Bettman would do.
He knows what he's doing. No, you're right. I like Daly better than Bettman. So when Bettman says I'm hanging it up, I like Bill Daly a lot more.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a logical choice, but then again, it's the NHL where logic is there. Anyway, so we're looking at the playoffs now, and let's handicap the playoffs. If they do that 30 teams and, everybody gets one shot to get in, we know who the cream of the crop is. We know we have Boston and Washington and St. Louis that are all going to be there, hopefully toward the end. What are some other teams besides Arizona that could use this layoff to get healthy and maybe reinvent themselves for that playoff push? What are some other teams we can look at and say we may want to hitch our horses to that wagon?
Well, there's so many of them. I did an article earlier before this whole thing stopped the season, where there was just all these major surgery injuries with really prominent players. So a team like Colorado, they're going to get healthy. I actually think they have a pretty good shot at getting Taylor Hall. But there's all these teams have had injuries. The Coyotes had injuries, but these top teams, Colorado comes to mind, right off the bat, who had injuries and who can really use this time to get their players healthy. But then again, what do you think, Ed? These players are going to need time. If they do come back and they just shoot right into the playoffs, they're going to have a 3 to 5 day training camp. They can't just get back out on the ice. They're not able to skate. Some of them are rollerblading just to stay in shape, lifting weights, working out by themselves because they can't be in a group. So it's going to take some time. You don't want to get more injuries by putting them out there too soon when they're not back in shape. Well, so that's another factor.
I think, and I'm going to talk about the Blues because that's the team I obviously know the best. They're going to get Vladimir Tarasenko back. And to get an number one winger to come back for a team that's already playing well, that's going to be huge. But if you're looking at a team that could potentially be dangerous in that 1-3-5-7-7 format, look at Chicago. Chicago is dangerous, and as maligned as Corey Crawford is, he is capable of stealing a game from you. And all it takes is one game to start at the crap rolling down the hill. You have Crawford steal that one game, and Patrick Kane scores one goal. They beat you 2-1, and now everything gets reseeded. Now they're playing a team like Colorado, who may not be back on the horse as what they were. They may not be all the way that healthy. So if they take Colorado down in 3, now they got momentum going forward. And you have veterans like Seabrook and Kane and Taves and a litany of people that have been there before. Chicago could be dangerous. You already said Colorado. Every team in the Central, most of the teams in the Pacific, I think you got to look at a team like San Jose. If Erik Karlsson can figure out how to play defense, again, I think he's dangerous. Jonathan Quick, as maligned as he's been this year, he can steal games for you. Montreal, I'll never count out Carey Price as long as I live.
Exactly.
New Jersey, it can get very underrated. Even a team like Buffalo, anything's possible. I mean, look at last year, last place to the Stanley Cup Championship. Anything's possible, especially in the NHL, especially when one loss can knock out a potential 3 overall seed in the conference. And that's huge. I've seen a 16 seed, the North Stars, go all the way to the finals one year. I saw the President's Trophy winning Blues get swept by San Jose one year. I think that was 2001. Stuff like that happens. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see what the playoff format holds, but I like the cream often rises to the top, and as much as I would like to see another Cinderella story push forward into June, July, and August, I think you're going to look at St. Louis, you're going to look at Boston, Washington. The teams that are at the top are going to stay at the top.
Yep.
So let's talk about one more thing before we move on from the coronavirus, which I'm hoping we can all move on from the coronavirus as healthily and as safely as possible.
We need to check it in the board so it never gets back up.
Yeah, there you go. We have a layoff. It's been a month, maybe another couple. How is this going to impact the offseason in 2021? Obviously, the draft's going to have to get pushed back. Training camps are probably going to have to get pushed back, depending on the playoff format. And maybe even the beginning of the 2021 season get pushed back.
Right.
Where do you see this all shaking out? Or are we still in kind of a wait-and-see kind of thing?
I think they're in a wait-and-see. I think they're taking all options and putting them on the table and trying to figure out which puzzle pieces fit where. But they need to get something concrete here, but they don't have any way of knowing when they're going to start playing. Number one thing is to keep their players safe, and a few of them have caught the virus, and they've recovered as far as we know. We don't know too many names, and that's private information anyway. But, if more players test positive, it's going to be a setback because they got to be quarantined for another 14 days. And so, hopefully all the players are following the guidelines from the healthcare professionals and doing what the team tells them to do. Stay healthy, stay home, try to stay in shape as much as you can, work out at home, whatever you can do. But until then, it's like up in the air. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And this is not just for hockey players. This is for all of us.
Right.
This is a whole new world order, if you want to go with that, because
we talk about the New World Order on a different brand of the show.
Oh, okay.
That's
but
wrestling.
I do have a question, regressing a little bit. Why is wrestling still going on, Ed? I mean, these guys are up against each other with body fluids coming out and everything else, and they're still going?
Well, actually, we just had night one of two of WrestleMania in front of an empty arena. A lot of the stuff is taped in advance, at least for this show of shows. This is the WWE's equivalent of the Super Bowl.
Gotcha.
They've cut down a lot of the matches. They're showing classic matches as time fillers. They're doing a few more promos than what maybe you would normally see. A lot of these guys are getting tested on a weekly basis to make sure that they are clear. Pretty much everybody you see, the second they cough, they're done, and they get taken out. Actually, a guy that was going to main event the biggest show of the year in WrestleMania, Roman Reigns, he has leukemia, and he actually just beat it, but he stepped back because he's immunocompromised. The WWE is an entertainment brand above all. They are a TV show with athleticism, is probably the best way I can describe it. They are very well maintained, and I just wrote about this on my blog. People need a distraction.
Sure.
People can't immerse themselves in history all the time. There's no football, there's no baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, golf, NASCAR, whatever. At least with professional wrestling, even though it is in front of absolutely nobody but your television screen, it's a way to immerse yourself in something different. And it helps. It's helped me a lot. Wrestling will never stop. It's like taxes, death, the news cycle, and what I thought was sports. Wrestling will never stop, no matter what it is. Wrestling was the first major public gathering after 9/11. It doesn't stop for anybody. It doesn't stop when somebody dies in the ring. It doesn't stop when somebody has a heart attack 3 hours before the show. Wrestling doesn't stop. It helps people more than it hinders. And these people are in very good medical hands. That's why it's kept going. Not to mention, they're not going to shut down the Super Bowl, the biggest show of their year.
Yeah,
they'll never shut it down. So that's why we have professional wrestling.
Do you see them playing hockey? Now, I've read on the NHL site that they were looking for neutral sites to play games without fans in the stands. I mean, that's just not appealing to me. And the players are going to be affected by that. They get pumped when they have that extra crowd. You know,
the crowd is an essential accoutrement to any sporting event, and to not have a crowd in front of those people, to not have a crowd in the stands obviously takes away from everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
However, I would rather have some form of hockey than none at all. And if that's what it takes, if it takes, all 30 teams to be staying at the new hotel in St. Clairsville to play all of their games at the West Banco Arena right here across the river in Wheeling, West Virginia, I'm obviously going to be okay with that, mainly because I could probably go down there and pedal for autographs. But if that's what it takes for hockey to be played, I would rather hockey to be played in some point than not have a Stanley Cup this year. That still means something, no matter how minuscule the crowd is in front of it. I mean, ask the people in Florida. Would they rather have hockey? Nobody really shows up there anyway, so the Panthers aren't going to feel bad. Yeah. But, I'd rather have hockey there than anything else.
Well, does it deface the integrity of the game to do it that way?
No. What would deface the integrity of the game would be banging on a trash can so you know what's coming. That debases the integrity of the game. Steroids debase the integrity of the game. This does not. This is just trying to preserve the game so it does not die a terrible death.
So it's not going to be equivalent to a lockout season where they played 48 games and they'll have an asterisk, next to the Stanley Cup.
I don't even believe the asterisk should be there. A season's a season's a season.
Yeah. The things that happen. They can't really control them.
Right. Asterisks are a great thing for purists to talk about and devalue what's already happened. But what's happened has happened. Who cares if it was a 48-game season or a 90-game season? Who cares if a guy shot some stuff in his butt to hit 90 home runs? It still happened. Let it play. History goes about the way it should. And It's a part of history. The great thing about history is it's preserved in museums, and museums are set to be neutral and to tell a story. So when it's all said and done and the Museum of History says, hey, in 2020, the Chicago Blackhawks with a losing record won the Stanley Cup championship, you don't need an asterisk. You need to have a footnote that mentions this was the only reason Chicago got in there was because of a global pandemic that killed millions of people. Then yes, you can put that in the history books as a footnote, but you don't put an asterisk devaluing everything that that team accomplished that year, because that's terrible.
Yeah, in other words, they won, and the only way they won was because of the world crisis. That's not.
No, you explain the event, but don't disparage what happened.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's talk about, since we both agree that the regular season is over, let's give away some awards. How about it? Let's start with the Jack Adams Trophy for Coach of the Year. I brought forth 3 names. I want to hear what you think about them. Dave Tippett, Craig Berube, and Bruce Cassidy.
Right.
Out of those 3, am I forgetting anybody?
I don't think so. I think those are the 3 major candidates. I mean, some people want to put Torts in there, but I don't know. The Blue Jackets did, better than most people thought they would because they lost most of their roster. But for me, I got to go with Tippett. He's brought that team. Now, here's what Tippett did. He brought some defensive discipline to that team. They have the offense coming out of every orifice of their body.
Gotcha.
They can if they can play a little bit of defense and get some decent goaltending, they're going to be there. And Tippett kind of showed them how to do that. So I think bringing them back to where they were leading the Pacific there for a while, and they look like a pretty good up and coming team. And so for me, I think he deserves it.
Now I'm gonna counter your point there, and I'm gonna bring up too. The only reason Torts is in there is because of one of the dark horses for the Vezina Trophy, and we'll get to that in a second. But How about Craig Berube? Do you think that maybe he's going to get some consideration as, we didn't consider you very well last year, but this is for everything that you did last year, especially in the playoffs, and for carrying that over into this year. Does he maybe get some consideration there as well?
Oh, I'm sure he should. The thing is, when you're a Stanley Cup champion, they expect you to be that good the next year. And so he's going to probably say, he's supposed to be there, but sure, coming back to back is not as easy as some people think. And they played extremely well under his leadership. So I think, it might be between those 2 coaches. It's going to be close.
All right, let's move on to the Calder Trophy. Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, and Kubalik. I can't think of his first name. It escapes me right now. Who do you got there? It's Hughes' trophy to lose, right?
Oh, exactly. And Makar and him were pretty close. And I think Hughes has caught up near the last of the season here, the last of the games they played before the suspension. But I like Kulik, but Makar and Hughes are just incredible. For as young as they are, they look like 5-10-year veterans out there. They're smooth, they're mature, they know what to do, and they can skate and shoot and all that stuff. So for me, though, I'm going with Hughes. I think he's going to be my choice.
What about a guy like Adam Fox, who's right up there with the points? He doesn't get a lot of press. Is he going to get any consideration there?
I think he's going to get a little, but those 3 people in front of him are going to probably take a lot of the votes. But no, I don't think he's going to win it. He could come in second or third, but it's unlikely. Okay,
let's talk about the Vezina. We have a bunch of names that never get spelled right. Tuukka Rask because people forget the extra U.
Right.
Vasilevsky because of the Y at the end. Hellebuck because of the Y in the middle. Bennington because it's an I, not an E. Who do you think holds the edge there? Rask, maybe? It seems like this is a pretty close race.
I think Rask is probably in the lead by a short margin. The other 3 behind or the 4 behind him. Bennington, he wasn't off this year, but he wasn't as great as last year. I think you can agree with that.
That's kind of hard to be, though. I mean, as hot as he was last year.
It's like a big season. It's like that doesn't happen that often.
Right.
So, to me, I think it's going to be Rask, even though he got hurt there a little bit. I mean, Boston has awesome goaltending. So if they get to the finals, they're going to probably, again, they're probably going to be a little bit more hard to beat because they'll have the goaltending that'll,
right,
take them where they want to go.
How do you feel about a guy whose name will get misspelled quite often? Elvis Merzlikins in Columbus. He's the guy that I said the only reason Torts is getting Adams consideration is because of him. Yep. The dude has the capability to take over any game. We've seen Columbus's defense be more than suspect at times, and him pull them out of the fire the way that Jimmy Howard used to and kind of still does in Detroit when he gets any kind of help. He's a young guy. A lot of people are comparing him to this year's Binnington. Where do you think he shakes out as far as the Vezina goes?
I don't think we have enough stats on him to really evaluate him. He didn't play the whole season, but he really does look impressive. And I don't even try to pronounce his last name. I just call him Elvis. Elvis is in the house. We throw that into our articles quite a bit. So it's kind of fun. But I think if I had to place him, Ed, I'd say probably the order you have him on your list here. And Elvis, taking up fifth place. But definitely a goalie of the future. I mean, he's going to be there in the next couple of years. He's somebody you got to watch.
Fair enough. You ready to talk about some defensemen? Because here we go. We actually have a few, well, at least one big-name free agent on this list. And if he brings home the Norris, not only am I going to feel good about it, but I'm going to feel really, really terrified about it as well. Roman Josi, John Carlson, Alex Pietrangelo, Victor Hedman. Who's the front runner out of those four?
Well, this is a tough one. I put Carlson at the top of the list. The guy's just been awesome.
Right.
I mean, just his point totals. And, I never thought of him as being an offensive defenseman, but he can sure put up points this year. So, not for that reason alone, because he is a pretty good all-around defenseman. And Josie's good, too. So, this is a tough choice. Victor Hedman's always been there. He's won it before. He's got good numbers on possession and everything else. So, but I'm going to go with Carlson, I think.
Okay. How about two guys from Calgary, Jacob Slavin and Dougie Hamilton? They're having amazing years. Calgary has been up and down, more up than down. Do you see them maybe splitting votes for themselves, or do you see maybe them getting any consideration whatsoever, especially given Calgary's in Canada?
Are you saying Calgary or Carolina?
Yes, Carolina. Sorry.
I said, wait a minute. I know.
Yeah, I read the thing wrong. Carolina. So forget everything I said about Canada, but Carolina. Yeah.
Carolina. Yeah, they are very. I mean, if anybody's got a treasure of defensemen, it's got to be that team. So those two guys are. Actually, Hamilton kind of surprised me with his season. I thought he played very well. So he's going to get some votes, and so will Slavin. So, that's going to be a real tight. I'd like to see how those votes come out because it's going to be really close. You got, a group of quality guys who can play offense, defense, and shut down the other team. So, I don't know if Carolina's going to keep all their D-man or what they're going to do, but they've got a treasure of them, and it's really what's held them together.
Right. Well, speaking of a treasure trove of defensemen and keeping all of their defensemen, Alex Pietrangelo is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
He plays for my Blues. He is our captain. He is the first ever Blue to touch a Stanley Cup wearing a blue note. Does he stay in St. Louis?
I think so. I can't see them losing him, but I wrote an article that probably would get a lot more controversy during regular conditions in the outside world, that the Coyotes should get rid of Ulrich Larson, captain.
There's another one, yeah.
$0.25 million till forever, 27, 28. But the guy has really slacked off. I saw one game, and I can't remember what game it was, but a forward blew by him like he was, a brick sitting on the ice there. And I thought, where were you, OEL? So he's another one that I think should go. But I think Alex is going to stay with the Blues.
Okay. What do you think he gets? Like, if he goes to free agency, there's been projections 9.5, 10.5 in certain places. Does he give the Blues a hometown discount?
I don't know. I'm not sure what their cap situation is. They're probably mid range. I don't think got 7-8 million, or they got
Yeah,
less than
they're
that.
they're they're up against it. They're going to be pretty close if they give him 8. I
Well,
want to say.
this is all depending on us assuming that the cap's going up to 84, and it's not. I mean,
Well,
after they're
the,
losing money this year, it might stay where it's at or go down. So then teams are going to be like, "Whoa, how do we keep these guys?"
well, they also have the added benefit that Jay Bouwmeester's contract's going to come off the books. As sad
Right.
as that story is, um, so there's an extra 3-ish million that's coming off. So
Mm-hmm.
that we hope will go toward Petro, but we'll wait
Yeah.
and see. Would you like to see him in a in Yotes Burgundy?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's a quality player. Um, I think he's a better defenseman than OEL. I mean, we've got some young guys coming up, and uh, Cabo Bianco down in the AHL. He's been hurt a lot, but I think he's going to get a look next year. But I just think OEL, I'm done with him. It's just like, and I don't know. And actually, my managing editor called me out on this because I really have been reading things, but I don't have proof that he's not really the greatest captain ever. But how do you take Shane Doan's place?
Yeah,
And
those are some big skates to
pretty
fill.
tough to do. So, I don't know if his leadership's there. He's kind of a quiet guy. I know that. Reading that from Craig Morgan, who knows the Coyotes and covers them. But that doesn't mean he's not a good leader. But, there was a recent game where he got his face smashed into the glass. And what really perturbed me was nobody came to his rescue on the team. So they need somebody a little tougher. They used to have a couple tough guys. They really don't anymore.
All right. Well, one of those guys was Shane Doan too, and
Yeah, we lost a lot of that with him leaving. We have Boston Krause. He's a big guy. He gets in there and fights a few times, but one of our defensemen I think it was Chikrin, just raised his hands like to the ref, like, "Whoa, what's going on? What's going on with that? Why don't you go over there and kick the guy's butt in the boards? Your
right.
captain just got creamed." And who was that hit him? Dallas, Jamie Benn or somebody? I can't remember.
Oh wow, there's a shocker. Jamie Benn took a cheap shot at somebody.
Yeah, really.
But a lot of that goes with the fact that it's the new NHL, where that stuff's. I mean, not every player is Patrick Maroon, who will sit there and do that and has the ability to score a goal or two.
Right.
It kind of comes with the territory nowadays. Welcome to the new NHL, where it's a more gentlemanly game, kind of. But let's move on to the Hart Trophy, the final trophy we're going to talk about before we move on. Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, and David Pastrnak. You have Edmonton and the Eastern Conference. Are Draisaitl and McDavid going to split votes between the two so a guy like Pastrnak or Ovechkin can get another Hart Trophy?
That's a good point because you can't keep either Draisaitl or McDavid out of there, and they could split the votes, and then someone else will sneak up past them. And don't count out Panarin. He had a great
the bread man, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great trade that the Rangers made, and really, it looked like they weren't going to be anywhere, but they came on there near the end, and if they get in the playoffs, they're going to be tough.
Can you imagine the story that NBC is going to push? Win one for Lundqvist. It's going to make me sick. But please continue. Sorry.
No, it's like the same thing with somebody like Mike Smith. I never had much appreciation for him. I'd go to games and he'd let in the easiest, softest goal, and then he'd make this fantastic save. It's like, can you kind of play somewhere in the middle there so we know you're going to stop the puck?
There's a guy named Jake Allen that does that in St. Louis, where the guy can look absolutely brilliant, and then a Steve Yzerman, John Casey kind of shot will go in, and you're like, why?
Yeah. Or some goon scores on Smith, and it's like, how could you let that guy score on you? Yeah. So, for the Hart, boy, it's tough. If McDavid wasn't in there, it'd be hands down Draisaitl, because he's really, I think he was on track to get more points than
one of Gretzky's heyday years.
Yeah, he was going to get like 130 points the way he was going, so it's pretty hard to eliminate him. But you make a good point with McDavid being in there. A lot of people are going to vote for McDavid. They're going to say, I'm not voting for Draisaitl.
Well,
so if that happens and you split the vote, then you got Ovi, who's probably going to get a lot of votes, and Pasternak too. I mean, that guy's unbelievable. I think if that happens, then Ovi might get it.
Can we talk about just how great the Russians are, or would have been in the Olympics coming up? I mean, yes. Ovechkin, Panarin, a healthy Tarasenko, and you have all of those defenders they have. That's just scary to go up against. So who's your pick to win the Hart?
I'm going to still go with Draisaitl. He's got to be my number one guy.
All right, fair enough. That's going to wrap up our awards portion of this show. You ready to talk about something a little bit more positive, Bill?
Absolutely.
Our 32nd team's coming in. It's going to Seattle. Before we get into all of the Seattle stuff, name, colors, all that stuff,
yeah,
will there be realignment?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's already been decided.
Who goes where?
I think it's already been decided that the Coyotes are going to the Central, and it's gonna kick them in the butt, because I don't think unless they can keep Hall, which I don't even know how they're going to do that. I don't think that they're going to be that. I like the rivalries, going against the Blackhawks and things like that, but I don't think their level of competition is going to help them going to the Central. The Pacific's a weaker division, and they're going to be facing some teams more often than they did before out of the Central.
Right.
Who usually, winds up getting the wild card spots, at least one of them, sometimes both of them.
Right.
So, it's unfortunate. I kind of saw that coming. I don't know if that helps our situation here with even keeping the team here. I haven't heard a peep about another arena. So, and then they've got the fines for the testing of the players, the prospects that they shouldn't have been doing. That could be $5 million. Of course, that's coming out of the owner's pocket. I don't know if he approved of that or if he knew what was going on. To me, I asked our CEO of our last word on hockey, because he's an attorney. So I said, can they actually negate Shaika's contract if they find out he approved of doing this? And he said, I don't know, I have to see the contract, but it certainly would be on the owner's mind to do something like that.
Right.
Because, he knows the rules. He's a young GM, but he knows the rules. So, them moving to the Central is not going to be good for him. But I kind of like the Pacific with Seattle in there. And I think Seattle, they got a lot to live up to try to replicate Golden Knights' performance. I mean, how do you come in as an expansion team and go to the Stanley Cup Finals? That's going to be hard to.
It's only happened twice in NHL history. And one time it was going to happen no matter what. So. Yep.
And they're going to have the same advantage with the expansion draft. Probably start thinking about writing some articles. We might do a series on, it's a little early, but on, which guys you want to protect, which guys you want to leave out for Seattle to grab. So it's going to be fun. I always thought Seattle should get a team, or Portland.
Now, you brought up something pretty interesting that I wanted, and I know it's going to rip you apart to talk about. You said there's these fines. It could equal up to $5 million. The owner's going to be in hot water with everybody else. What if those $5 million are used as a bargaining chip to leverage the sale of the team? Now, I ask you this because came across the Facebook group that my Marine Corps buddy is in, Hockey to Houston. And Nelson Fertitta was looking at purchasing the Senators, was in the hunt for the team that went to Seattle, was in the hunt for the team that went to Vegas. Yes. Arizona's had their ownership issues, granted. So is Ottawa.
Yep.
What do you think are the odds that Arizona, being that they're already going into the Central, being that there's this sort of Damocles kind of fine hanging over their head, given the fact they have an arena situation, will beyond the move to Houston make sense geographically, make sense time-wise as far as, scheduling of games and whatnot, and balances everything out?
I have a couple insights on this. Actually, I'm not sure if it was during the same time you were writing for us for a short time, but we have Christina Farouk, who's been on our Real Hockey Talk radio show a couple times, and she is from the Houston area, but of course she's a Dallas Stars fan. She's a Kings fan. So, but a complete hockey nut who hasn't really been a hockey fan that long, but she lives and breathes hockey. So I kind of asked her what she thought of this, and get this, she works at a kind of an upscale, or she did, restaurant. She probably isn't now, in the Houston area. And she had a big table of guys, and they all had suits on and laptops. And she kind of overheard them talking about the fact that they were thinking of buying she didn't know who they were, thinking of buying the Coyotes and moving them to Houston. Of course, Houston's, starving for a team.
Right.
So I've been staying in touch with her, and the main guy she was contacting, she hasn't, heard from him lately.
Right.
But it's a definite possibility. And Dave Isaac, who does our radio show, he likes the Golden Knights, but he's always talking about, he'll say, Houston, we have a problem. So he always brings this up, like the Coyotes are going to move to Houston, and so his son's on the show too, and we just say, oh, Dave, just knock it off, But right. He's got some valid points. He's got an accounting business. He goes by the numbers. He said the guy would be stupid to not move to Houston. He could sell out the arenas, which we're not doing here. We're averaging like 14,500 or something a game, and sure, they started playing a little better. But the fact that there's no arena talk, even with this new owner who's a billionaire, makes me wonder what's their future here. This would be worse than COVID-19 if we lost our team here. I don't know what I do. It'd be an AHL team here, but because they probably lose the AHL affiliate down in Tucson, so they would be bummed out. So the whole state of Arizona would say, what the heck's going on? Did we fall off the edge of the earth? So.
Well, outside of Austin Matthews, what else has come out of Arizona other than heat stroke and cacti? I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah, I know. I know your sense of humor, and I agree that. I wrote an article about Austin Matthews perhaps coming here when his contract ended, and it went pretty viral. So
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. He's a god in Toronto.
Yeah. He wants to be with the winner, just like...
You have a better shot at Mitch Marner.
Oh, exactly. Boy, I look back at that and I said, what were they thinking? Dylan Strom, really?
Yeah.
Mitch Marner just wound up being cream of the crop in that draft, and he's earning the money to prove it now. But yeah, it'd be nice to go back and do a simulation with Marner on that team, instead of Strom, because Strom's come back a little, but every player, some people ask me, well, why is this prospect taking so long to develop? I said, they all develop at a different pace.
Right.
Depends on their coaching, depends on their motivation. And he was up and down so much. And I think the Coyotes gave him every opportunity to go to the next level, and he just didn't grab it until he got to Chicago. So, and that's typical. We trade a guy, then he does well.
Look at Keith DeChuck.
Yep.
Enough said. One thing I did want to ask you, given that Arizona is probably going to be the team to move, how big is that rivalry going to be with Winnipeg? Because the Coyotes came from Winnipeg. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Correct.
How big is that rivalry going to be? Is it going to be like the Wild and the Stars?
I think it is. It kind of is now. They don't play each other that much, but when they go to the Central, they're going to be playing more often. So, that is Chicago, because you can call the Blackhawks the Chicago Coyotes and the Coyotes the Chicago Coyotes, because they've done so many trades amongst each other that each team knows the other team's players pretty well.
Right.
So that's another. I think the rivalries will be better. I don't know that the Coyotes are going to be any better, because, like I said, their competition is going to be at a level where they can't stay. They won't make the playoffs in the Central Division. Let's put it that way.
Well, to be fair, we don't know that. Teams rise up, and if you're playing the best every night, your game's going to get better. Steel sharpens steel, So
yeah, that's true, because they've had a history of that, Ed. I've seen them lose to Detroit, or how could you lose to a team like that? Well, they're not up for that level of competition. So you kind of play to the level of your competition, and they have beaten some pretty tough teams this year.
The only thing that may screw over Arizona moving to the Central is traveling to Chicago and then going on a back-to-back to Minnesota, or a back-to-back to St. Louis, or playing 4 games in 6 nights where you're in Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, Nashville, Minnesota, and then back home for that 6th game, and you've flown 8,000 miles, and you're coming home on the second half of a back-to-back, and you're just flat exhausted. Colorado has that a lot, but Colorado has the added benefit of elevation.
Yes.
They're going to be, not to mention, a lot of these games are going to be played 5 o'clock, their home time, because they are 2 hours behind the Central. So that's going to be a rough go of things, I think, for a little bit for Arizona. But let's move on. Let's move on to a new team, and that is Seattle. Do we have a name for Seattle yet?
Not yet. They're talking about it. They thought they were going to have it like a month ago. Then all this other stuff happened with the world events, and they want to announce it so they can make some bang with it, of course. So right now everything's suspended. So I don't blame them waiting. I don't know. I've heard all the names thrown out there when they talked about it before. I really don't like the Kraken. I hate that name.
What?
No, I don't like it.
What name would you prefer then? The Longshoreman?
Like wild, Ed. It's like an inanimate thing. What is a wild,
I mean, it's talking about the wildness of Minnesota. But the Kraken is definitely a tangible thing. It's a destroyer on the sea. It's this mythical creature. It's powerful. It defeats everything it comes against. I love it. I'm not a big fan of teams that don't have an S on the end, but that's neither here nor there.
I didn't know what a Kraken was until I Googled it. It's like, oh, okay, because I'm not from up there. I lived up there for a while when I was in the military, but, okay. And then you got copyright problems with other names that you might want to come up with.
Look at Vegas, yeah.
I don't have a favorite. Do you?
I like the Kraken. I think that,
Kraken, some people do.
They're going to have an issue with Detroit with the Octopus versus the Kraken and everything else. But, I mean, it would seem to fit up there. The color scheme, that dark green with almost a black and white, it seems to go together so well.
Yeah.
It seems like it's somebody who took a really long time in one of the EA NHL games creating their dynasty team or just using the creative team function and built it from the ground up. That's what this seems like, and I'm all for it. I wasn't a really big fan of the Golden Knights because teams with two names as their mascot, obviously not the Red Wings, just in hockey though. Completely, it's like, what are you doing? Golden Knights, how long before the Golden drops? And they're just the Vegas Knights, or they're the Las Vegas Knights, or they're the Nevada Knights, which I personally thought sounds better than the Vegas Golden Knights, but that's neither here nor there. I like the Seattle Kraken. I think it works together. I think that the colors that I've seen and the mock-ups that I've seen, I think they look good. But that's just me. One thing I wanted to touch base with you on, who should Seattle select as their first member of the Kraken? Who should be their first person that they're going to point to and say, that's our guy?
In the expansion draft?
Sure. Or free agency.
I don't know enough about the younger players besides Lafreniere, who's going to be pretty phenomenal. If Detroit gets him, they're going to be right up in there. But I gotta probably go through and see, because I'm thinking about my team here. But when you write about the whole NHL, you got to know a lot of teams, so it's a lot of research. But I don't know anybody that just sticks out that should be the first member of the Seattle Kraken, as you call them.
Okay.
But it depends. It's so variable because each team is going to, select or protect certain. There's two different ways to do it, right?
Right.
So who's protected, who isn't protected, those are all factors you got to take into consideration to figure out who you're going to pick first. But they have the advantage, just like the Vegas team, in that they can get some pretty good quality players that are going to go on and protect it. And plus they're going to be making deals, for draft picks, just like Vegas did. So I thought they were very crafty the way they handled that, because they wound up with a good quality roster, as evidenced by going to the finals. So.
Right. Another question for you. Does Seattle select David Perron, and how long until he goes back to St. Louis?
Poor David. He's bounced around like a rubber band, isn't he?
But he's always come back home.
He's always come back home, and I like him. He's a good quality player. He's had his issues. He's had injuries like every other player had. But yeah, that'd be a good choice. I mean, I'm trying to figure out who the Coyotes would lose. They were talking about maybe Lawson Krause, but I'd hate to lose him. But
OEL.
oh, what's that in your throat, Ed?
Oliver Ekman-Larsson, big contract, signed forever, maybe falling out of the good graces. If the team gets sold, going to need to shed some money, ... And he would be a big splash and be their first captain, still a young defenseman. Change of scenery may help him.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
I could see that happening. It could happen. Especially if he comes back and plays as horribly next year as he did this year.
There you go. If you're the GM of Seattle, what is your strategy to pick your team? Do you go with a young core group of players where you're basically just forfeiting the first few seasons as learning experiences? Do you go with veteran players a la what the Blues did in '67, where they take guys at the end of their careers, or maybe even some that have already retired, and bring them back and just run roughshod over, or try to run roughshod over, taking experience over youth is basically what I'm saying. Do you go with the young guys in the draft and then build through free agency, or do you just acquire as many draft picks as you can? What would Bill Grisby do if he's in charge of Seattle?
Well, I would pretty much follow the Vegas game plan, because they did have a good mixture of veterans and young players and free agency, and they definitely built up their draft. They're already bringing some of those guys up now that are going to be like Whitehouse. He's a good young defenseman.
Right.
Derek Englund's going to be bye-bye. He's getting old and easily replaced.
Yeah, but he's going to move into the front office there. He's from Vegas. He was their first big.
Exactly.
He was their guy.
He was their guy, and you can go with sentiment so long. You got to have somebody out there who can perform, and I think he knows that. But yeah, a good mixture of all those things. I mean, you don't want to be too young. You want to have some veterans to guide young players. You want to have the draft picks. You can just build the team from the bottom up. So I think if they go with Seattle goes with Vegas's plan, it's a winner. You got to go with it.
All right, well, that's going to bring us to the end of our show. Bill, thank you for coming on. What's going on with Last Word on Hockey? What articles you got coming up? And before you answer that, I hear you did an article with a former writer of yours, very talented guy.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that? Don't mention his name or anything, but explain what it was.
It was a Stanley Cup Champions tournament, which I thought was really interesting. A lot of work goes into that. It was a simulation, but I really liked, how you can detail what happened, how many saves X goalie got, who scored a hat trick in this game. So it was fun. I didn't get a whole lot of views on it, but I had to do a lot of Excel formatting, which is okay. I love using Excel, but our articles, when they appear, because of all the ads, as we all know why that has to be there, the horizontal width space that you have there is overrun by the ads. So you have to keep it within those boundaries. But I was able to do it, and I'm sure some people enjoyed it. And I know there's another idea out there floating around from the same person, so I might just throw that out there too. Because right now we're just searching for ideas. There's nothing going on. You got to kind of keep your readers intact. And like, I'm not doing a radio show. I'm thinking, people that listen to the show are going to wonder where the heck are we? But we're done for this month too, until we figure out what's going on, because we do it from a restaurant and there's no restaurants open. So
well, this is true.
We can do it from the studio, but
I can tell you right now, you're going to be back on next month when we know more, and we're going to talk more about the 2021 season and everything else. If you'll come back, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
And also on the next show, maybe me and you do a fantasy draft of players from last season, and maybe we simulate the game and talk about it and see what happens. What do you think?
That sounds good. I love looking at the draft. It's something that I'm kind of weak on. I got to get a little bit more knowledge on, because these young players are future NHL players, and you got to know who they are and what they can do. All
right, so let's go ahead and book it next month. We're going to talk about all things coming up in 2021, and in the first part of a two-part show, Bill and I are going to pick the fantasy draft of the players of 2019. And then in the second part of that show, we're going to simulate it, and we're going to talk about that game. So, Bill, get your players ready. Next month, around this time, we're going to talk, and we're going to build some fantasy players. All right. Thank you for coming on, Bill. I appreciate it. Like I said, I'll see you again next month. You got anything you want to say to the people before you leave?
No, just if you want to get bored and you're quarantined in your house, So lastwordonhockey.com. We got all the NHL covered. We have a good variety of writers, and hope you find something there you like to read and fill your day in.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill Grigsby, for coming on, and thank you all for listening. But as always, if you're not down with the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast, we got 2 words for you. Keep listening.